I'm going to read you a couple quotes off of some cool stuff I found on Facebook, mostly from a page called They're Dumbing Us Down and Free Citizen Coalition. One of them is a list of highly crafted set of lessons that are designed to teach you to submit and never question authority, conform to the flow of the system, learn just enough about relevant subjects such as math, science, history, etc. to be able to serve the system, learn just enough irrelevant stuff to fill the mock 8-hour workday, and also leave a gap in your understanding of such subjects at the end of the process wide enough to prevent you from ever figuring out what the schooling was actually for. Kind of interesting points. Another one right here. If you think American public schools value independent thought, you are living in a hallucination. No large institution values independent thought, and public schools actively despise and punish it. They demand and attempt to enforce and reward mindless obedience. That, and not algebra, is what they are designed to teach. That is their fundamental purpose, the real justification of their existence. That was a quote from Crispin Sartwell, I believe how you pronounce it. Got a couple other ones here. This one I thought was pretty funny. After 40 years of state-controlled education in America, we now have a majority of non-questioning people who will let the government do anything they want without even demanding accountability. And then there's the people who ask, why are you blaming this on public schools? Well, should I be blaming the United States Postal Service instead? Kind of got a point there. Another funny one. On the subject of homeschooling. Will the government ever go so far as homeschooling being banned? The states have already made it very hard to homeschool, and it's certainly not far-fetched to think that they may eventually attempt to ban it completely. Here's their reasons why. The percentage of people who homeschool a child is going up every year. The state cannot mold us into naive citizens, cannot peddle their propaganda effectively if the kids do not go to their propaganda centers. I don't really like that term, because, I mean, I went through public school. I dropped out midway through my junior year. I had my own reasons for it. None of them were selfish. I dropped out to take care of my family, but that's a different conversation. Either way, I had at least a couple good teachers along the way. Notably in third and fourth, fifth grade, 7th grade, and I would say 9th and 10th grade. I had at least one or two very good teachers throughout those years. And I don't just mean good teachers like they were able to teach their curriculum. I mean good teachers as in they weren't necessarily completely blindsided by what the compulsory education system enforced upon them. They were pretty sharp individuals, and they followed the curriculum. They did their job, and they did it very well. But they were also able to present the subject in a different manner than what was necessarily asked upon them. They went, as far as the teacher goes, they went above and beyond what was needed of them. And to them, I give full credit to my current understanding of a lot of stuff, because like I said, they did more than they needed to. They did more than they damn well should. And honestly, that's what teachers are there for, to go above and beyond and make sure that every single student understands their subject, regardless of the means needed to achieve that goal. Either way, as I go back to this quote on this Facebook page, they fear that there may be a generation forthcoming that will be majority critical thinkers. This is kryptonite to their status quo. They need gullible people who will not demand accountability. Without this, they will be put into check, or at worst, they'll be abolished. Then these people have to go out and generate their own survival according to the value that they provide. It really is nothing. There is not a government participator alive that wants to have to do that. Well, whoever wrote this, it's on a Facebook page called They're Dumbing Us Down. whoever wrote this, they had a fair point. Most people go into politics are effectively useless to the survival and continuity of mankind, in my opinion. Most of them predominantly comes from rich families. They become rich themselves. I'm not saying they all are worthless, and they haven't all had an easy life. I know there's some of them who've worked their way from the ground up, and I applaud them for that. But I think going into government was the wrong way, because as far as I can tell, there's some of them that try, but majority of them don't really do much to change anything. Now, some of you out there may say that's because they have, unsurmountable force against them. They're standing on their own, this, that, and the other. But it doesn't change the fact that there was possibly other ways for them to do more and or do better. But I still applaud them for their thoughts, ideals, and or trying. Can't doubt a man for trying, right? But when it comes down to it, whoever wrote this, the caption on this picture was right. Politicians, majority of them, not all, but majority of them do nothing to benefit us. They predominantly exist to benefit themselves. Now, they grant us certain liberties and freedoms that make us feel like they are serving us, which is the fundamental role of the federal government, at least in the United States, but that's a different conversation for another day. Nonetheless, they don't really do it. They, at least in some vague aspect of the term, are a virus on society, at least in my opinion. I know there's a lot of you out there who differ, and I value your opinions, but I would honestly at least expect you to respect my opinions as I respect and value yours. And I will give you all the chance to talk and comment on anything I say, and I will openly bring about debate and or discussion accordingly, as long as you are willing to be open-minded to my views as I'm willing to be open-minded to yours. Now, on to my next one. Got another picture right here about public education. It says, by systematically forcing those who will not conform to fail, this ingenious system creates an ever-growing herd of sheep people, while marginalizing those who pose the biggest threat to the system. Makes sense. If you want to maintain your current position, the easiest and best way to do that is to bring a downfall to those who oppose it. But that is not the best way to go about it. In my opinion, the best way is cooperation. Find a median ground, and a lot of you may say I'm an idealist, but quite frankly, that's the only way really to live. Think about it. Virus invades a host, the virus overcomes the host dies, the virus also dies. But then you bring about mycelium, who feed off of other living organisms in nature, but simultaneously do not necessarily hinder the growth and expansion of their host organism. I know mycelium may not be a very good analogy, but you get the idea. Here's another one speaking of the public education system. If you want to get laid, go to college. If you want an education, go to the library. That's supposedly a quote from Frank Zappa. And we got another one here. Some people claim that kids need the socialization of public schools. But what kind of socialization occurs in public schools? When 20 or 30 kids of the same age are placed in a classroom together day after day. Peer pressure is enormous. Kids feel like they need to look and sound and be like everybody else, at the risk of forgetting or never discovering who they really are. This results in rivalry, ridicule, and competition, hardly the environment for healthy socialization. Well, on that topic, I was also a victim of this, of what they were talking about. There was a point that I felt that I needed to act and look and talk like a lot of the kids around me. I am not racist, but I went to a predominantly black school. There was a little bit where I started acting and talking and behaving like, the hip-hop culture, which I was doing that to be accepted by the people who I perceived as being my friends. But over time I realized they honestly didn't give a damn about me. I realized I was much happier sitting in my room, playing video games, and playing my guitar. Sounds kind of lame to some of you, but other ones will agree that it's a better way to go because I was happy doing that. I didn't really study much beyond what the public education system presented onto me until I hit 14, 15 years old. And I started realizing that I completely disagree with a lot of stuff my teachers were talking about. Eventually, once I hit about 17 or 18 years old, I started studying physics on my own accord. I had a couple people in my life who kind of pushed me in the direction, but that's because they realized that I had the kind of intuition that was needed to, understand something as complicated as that. But it took me years to get to that point. There was a while where I didn't care to think on my own. I just did what I was told, as most kids do, but that's kind of part of being a kid and a teenager. You kind of do what you're told until you figure it out for yourself. But if I would have been pushed in the direction sooner, since I was kind of already predisposed towards that area, I think I would be a lot farther along in my understanding of a lot of things. Like, for instance, my current interest is in things along the lines of engineering. And I'm now at the point to where I can, build stuff on my own without any problems, and I can do things like rebuild car motors and whatnot. Not that big of a deal. The only thing really on a car I can't tackle is an automatic transmission, but even that's not that big of a deal. I just haven't taken the time to learn it. But if I would have been pushed in the direction at a younger age, I think I would have been a lot farther along in my current understanding of things such as engineering and physics. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with this whole public school thing, is they don't push that. They go over basic mathematics and history and English, which English grammar and composition is good and all. You need to know how to write, speak, and talk to other people in ways that will benefit you depending on the situation. But there's still things we need to learn how to do. Like, for instance, on the topic of gun control, I think there should be at least a basic class on munitions safety and knowledge and understanding in the subject thereof. Because if kids understand the danger of things like munitions, they would better appreciate the fact that they really shouldn't mess with it unless they needed to. But that one's even kind of an iffy subject. I'll make another video on that later. But for the time being, I think we need to completely overhaul our compulsory education system. A very good place to start would be on the curriculum. I honestly think that the parents should be allowed to participate in a public vote on what their kids are taught to a certain degree, because not all parents are professionals. But if you want to get technical, statistically speaking, if we get enough parents to vote on it, there will be a very good general representation of what our children need to be taught in order to survive, predominantly on things like math, science, writing, and economics, which I know are already courses in public school as it is, but they don't go very detailed, and they aren't very in-depth, and a lot of it's kind of rushed. I mean, you give the kids, one school year, but one school year is really, 9-10 months. And at least here in Duval County, which is where I reside, they have an A-B schedule for the classes, particularly in high school. Some middle schools do it too, but it's mainly in high school. They will go to a certain classes on A day, and they'll go to another certain classes on B day, which means that every other day they go to the class, which means that out of the approximately 180-day school schedule, you spend realistically 90 days in any given class. Well, it's only 3 months. So you're telling me that you expect the children to completely, fully understand a concept in 90 days. You're talking about kids who are already distracted with things like, puberty, sexual desires, boyfriend, girlfriend, social, things such as hanging out with their friends, partying. They're learning to drive. They're being introduced in society, and they're expected to completely mold themselves and go into society in that short of time. Even at 90 days through the 4-year standard course of high school, 4 times 90 is only going to be 360 days. So you completely expect them to fully understand all these concepts in approximately 360 days for every single course they have to go through in those 4 years, combined with the fact that they alternate the classes every single day. I don't think that works. I also went through this very same system, and I had a lot of trouble with it. But this is what we're presented with. I don't see much room for the parents' intervention, and I take a naturalistic approach to a lot of these things. I feel that education is primarily, other than the individual student themselves taking their own, education into their own hands, the next most important piece is their parents. And quite frankly, the only play that their parents have in their own education is whether or not they help them with their homework when they come home at night and paying taxes to support the compulsory education system, which really isn't to their own children's benefit. But we don't have an option whether or not we pay for this public education, and we don't have much say-so in how it runs. It kind of brings about some pretty interesting concepts, but the video is getting kind of long anyway, so I'll go ahead and cut it short for now. My main point I'm getting at is, even if we can't abolish the compulsory education system, the least they can do is take all of my tax dollars that I pay and extend the education system. I was only able to complete halfway through my 11th grade year. Technically, I only completed 10 years of public schooling. If I had been presented with the option to go to college for free, via taxpayer dollars, I would have done it already. The main thing holding me back is the cost of getting a GED, because I have a family to support. Not my own family. I support my mother and my sister on top of myself. I can't afford to get my GED, nonetheless pay for college. Even if I could get grants and scholarships, I don't have the time, because I work approximately 55 hours a week between two jobs. I don't have the time or the money. And a lot of that could be fixed if they increased minimum wage, increase benefits on employees by state mandate or by employer consent. Either one would really work, in my opinion. And by fixing our public education system, because honestly, if they would have fixed our public education system, I would have a higher degree of intelligence beyond what I've acquired myself just through the public education system alone, and then I could have further advanced that on my own accord afterwards. But either way, like, dislike, whatever you want. Leave comments in the video, send me messages, whatever. I'll post my email address up. You guys can continue conversations on your own from there, or contact me directly. We'll discuss what I've talked about, and we'll see you in my next video. Have a good one. Bye.